It's Sunday. It's April 23rd, 2023. I am I went this morning to Zion to church. And in the Gilded Room there was a change on the schedule. I was very grateful for it. It was a professional speaker of sorts, um, who just, again, talking about blessings, um, to be in the presence of, and again, she's a woman of greatness, I would say, very fluid with speaking and teaching at such a higher frequency I'm than I've been or had access to. Um, and so I was very grateful for her this morning, and for Anthony to be taught by such a woman was really, really wonderful. Um, so there's that piece. Then we went up into the sanctuary. And now, when I started at Zion in the Kimchi Plaza, the KIM, and then CHI Plaza, there's a French Cleaners, there's the Aegean Sea restaurant, there was something else that they have there, and then it was the Swazi sticker for the congressman for the local area, or at least when I drove by it, that was what was in the shopping center. Across the street at Kent Place, Kent, was some US flag and Afghanistan flag, and they had a consulate open. I'm like, what is that about? With the Red Cross flag, the red stiletto, shall we call it? Like, again, I don't know who's running around New York City in black stilettos. I don't. But it is really frightening when there's a red stiletto across the street and the stuff is going, these shenanigans are going on. And I don't know who to report this to, and like who's minding the store at Homeland. So, um, I'm there in the red stiletto, and I'm this morning. So when I got there, it was a Swazi sticker next to Zion with a red stiletto. And these black stiletto marks pock, for lack of a better word, the landscape in symbolic. It's in the diagram, it's in the mapping of this area. Whoever's controlling it, how it's built, I'm not quite clear. Um, but this is the area that they forced me back into. I was whatever on Long Island, but now I'm in Queens, closer to the problem area. Um, and so there's that. So now my son is telling me there's, first of all, there's no flag, there's no USA flag flying outside of his school. I've reported it to several people just so my reporting's up to date at Homeland Security, because I don't know how or why. I know there's, again, I just saw, like, The Rock for me is Ed Harris. If we want to talk like career portraits and what I enjoy watching in the movie theaters. But then they changed this Rock to a wrestling character of a Samoan, whatever. And now he's become some Black Adams in some, I don't know, this morning the Gilded Room woman from Disney said that it was Amuse, Muse. I'm like, oh, okay, never heard of that before. But then again, I've never heard of the myths, the epic sagas, like the originals, like the original Testament, or the how they've the spin-offs. It's quite daunting and confusing based on the series of rooms I've been allowed to be in at such a low level. It's beyond ridiculous. Um, so this morning, how things have changed. Well, Kent Place no longer has an Afghan flag raised outside of it. It has some city service workers, like cops, firemen, EMS, nurses, like first responders, kind of a thing, in a flag to replace the Afghanistan flag, um, which was being flown the same size and at the same level as the U.S. flag, which I also thought was against regulations. But who am I? And like just making observations and notices of like really important whatever to like call upon the professionals to do whatever they do. And I don't really like fighting, and it's not what I'm built for, but here we are. So um so there's this so now there's no longer a Swazi sticker, Congress guy. There's now this Santos guy, which they have up in the public, um, that he has no real, like, I can only say that's how I feel about Tia Frio 1975. I heard also that they're putting up some Taylor Swift 1970 or Taylor Swift 75. I don't know what that's about. I'm not in the underground tributaries. I don't know how the trendy kids speak, but I'm just making real world observations without having an ear to whatever the chirping in the forest is. Um, so now it's a Santos sticker to the left of Zion. And when I go into the Red Stiletto on Sunday, I'm I get the missile or the bulletin, and it has in there at Sanctus, it has Santo. You put an S at the end of Santo, and now all of a sudden it's Santos, which is the name that they replaced. I was happy with the Swazi sticker. I mean, I wasn't happy that an Afghan consulate opened up, but I mean, the name Swazi didn't bother me. Um, Now I've got somebody else in there, and it's this Santos bit. And instead of it being Dio, which is Latin, it's now Dios with an S. And there's this song that's now in this literature that they're singing, um, which is in like Spanish, and I'm like, or some version of some dialect of, like, again, my upbringing. There were three choices. There was as a second choice, because English is the first for George Washington area, and then second place or second chair was either French, Latin, or Spanish. That's how they classified it. So the dialect was pronounced Spanish, but Latin is what, like like the old Catholic tradition of mass. Like the Greeks have mass in Greek. Latin Catholics used to have it in Latin. For some reason now everything just seems to be jumbled up in some really confusing mishmash. So they had this song once that they've already played. I didn't think much of it in mentioning, but now it's hit the missile and the bulletin twice. And I'm like, here's where this is a problem. In the middle school, um, that's in the natural progression from where the elementary school is, from where the only place I have to put my son during the day for education, professional education, is the only language that they've spoken to him about that they're going to offer is Mandarin or Spanish. I'm like, what happened? I mean, and that's in Bay, on the Bay side. On the ocean side, and when we were in the Patchogue, it was different languages were being offered. So there's this real concern I have in the local area. Now, this being what the front and the head of a quarter still looks like. So Georgetown knows that New York still has the same, whichever, going on at Red Stiletto is still first in the only house that I seem to have access to enter. I don't see anything with a blue um, stiletto, and there's a white stiletto somewhere, but they don't speak English in their teachings. I was since at least I had gone here for a couple of years, but since at least 1988, it was St. John's Day, 1988. I do not know the name of the man who showed up and was in my physical realm of quantum entanglement in the most respectable way at Sunday school. He was some form of celebrity. I don't know if he was a world celebrity. I don't know if he was a King George celebrity. I don't know if he was a different king. I don't know if he was a king's man or a just a regular Georgetown. I do not know the name or face of this gentleman, but I know how significant he was, and all the other children knew his celebrity status. Like, I did not, and I apologize in my adulthood that I cannot remember what his name was, but I still have the pin. And I also still have, he actually, because he knew that I did not know who he was, he actually took off one of the buttons of his jacket and he bestowed it upon my person, along with offering the children attending the congregation this pin that we were all together in this building. He also gave me this off his jacket, which has a crown and which has a horseman. So I know he was incredibly significant, but I apologize. I don't know the name. He knows the name of who he is. And this is when I was moved from Queens to the Glen, where I was, and where we met was at a building that it was a red stiletto building that said St. John's, and they made a day of his arrival, and it was in the year 1988. I am now in the year 2023 in reporting this. So that's what the ongoings are in the local area, which concerns me, especially with some of the issues that I've experienced with Blacksmith after a crazy donkey. And those were in, just like St. John's was a building that I entered to meet this person. And the person who gave me this, I entered a building. I was sent to, by a Janus, I was sent to a location where it was called Crazy Donkey. And I did not think much of it. I didn't know what it meant. It meant absolutely nothing to me at the time. And then the people in the building meant absolutely nothing to me at the time. But that's where the 1976 problem was that evening, that then became an even bigger problem in a story that I never wanted to develop. And then there is later after that, trying to recover from that, there was a blacksmith problem, which then went into this Tia Frio 1975 issue or problem that I still can't seem to shake and get rid of and get back on the correct path. So this morning, I just finished church, or what they call church, but in the same Glen where I was growing up safely and under strict order, I suppose, because when I hear some of the other children, like this professional speaker that came, she seems to be very much like talked with and to develop language, even in an English setting, for which I'm deficient of at her level. But same placement here is where I got the letter from the GOD during that time. So I know that that's significant. This morning on the television, Thunderbirds came on for IR. It's on the Me TV for New York and New Jersey area, which is ME, not the MI. And so I'm watching this, and it says terror in New York City. And the storyline is that they're trying to move, hypothetically, or on this puppet or this marionette, whatever, they're trying to move this Empire State Building. Now, this came out in the 1960s. So I'm watching it and I'm just like, oh my God, oh my goodness. And so they say something that it's several different components from the like aviation industry being manufactured and sent to this one location, and they're trying to put this Empire State like moving device together and whatever, without, of course, things collapsing or falling apart. So I'm watching that with a keen ear and a keen eye at the moment. So this is what it sounded like.
Boy, what a mess. Once the new components arrive, we'll have to work round the clock to get it right.
Well, this is the tricky part of our operation. Trying to keep everything secret.
Look, Scott, we order each component from different aircraft corporations. None of them know what they're making. It's only when they all arrive here that the jigsaw fits together.
I guess I worry too much.
So this morning it says terror in New York City. And the air date on this
I am also accustomed to being
is 1965. It says an operation to move the Empire State Building ends in disaster when the ground collapses. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. Now, at the beginning of this, there was some show I did not tape, but I caught the tail end of it, called The Invaders. It was talking about Reed was exiting the building. There was a woman in a red dress, and then there was this David Vincent. And I'm just like, again, the last preparatory school was John, and they went off of something called a Vincent, and it was on something called a Crescent Street. But I, again, had no idea what the relevance of what any of that was, especially walking in. And same year, they sent me to something called a Sunnyside, Queens, to meet some MVP, and I was the VIP that night. I think he said he was in a magazine. But again, I don't know. I wasn't following the boys' stuff. Like, um, we had just moved, and it was really confusing. Like, and again, I think we even had that conversation. Like, where do you meet? Like, where did he hang out? Like, where was I supposed to go? Like, this was where I was supposed to go to meet people. It didn't make sense, especially since Lewis said that normally it's not where you go to meet people, or not people that you want to spend great any amount of time with. But so this was the end of the show, and it was called The Invaders. And then it segues into this terror in New York City.
Perhaps it has ended for the Reed family, but for David Vincent, it is still the beginning.
This is the MeTV Network, seen locally on WJL.
So again, that was what they put up this morning at International Rescue. And I'm going to pause this for a second. I think there's one more piece of this towards the end of the episode that was incredibly important. Now, this is them going into the piece. It says Terror in New York City in the beginning, and then it goes into the actual, and it's not the NTSB. They have NTBS. And I'm like, now what is the BS? Like, I mean, I see the BS in the morning, but I don't know what this BS is. So anyhow, they make note of this moving of the, and again, it's not claymation, but it's some form of architectural diagram almost, that came out in 1965. And I'm like, now that's interesting. And then the fact that they're re-airing it is also very interesting. And I'm watching it carefully along with some of the other stuff that's gone on. And I'm like, it says that there's 2 jacks and that they're trying to move it 200 yards. Now, I also noticed inside of this marionette, theatrical, whichever, it makes note of the, like, instead of like in today's day and time, I've heard them on the air, like radio, saying like 10-4. And that was part of the 2 squares on the original black and white from one of the television studios of I don't know what, when it was 2 squares or a diamond and a square together. And so that they came out with 10-4. Then like Adam's 12 seems to have picked up on this 10-4. For some reason in IR standards, they're communicating with an FAB. And I'm like, FAB. I mean, it's pronounced a lot throughout this one particular episode in this one episode called Terror in New York City. So I'm watching this now.
You are about to witness, folks, one of the greatest pieces of engineering feats of all time.
You say that's Nate Cook. You know, the guy had to stop filming us at the oil well.
Yes, Scott. He'd do anything for a story.
In a few moments, the National Television Broadcasting System will show you a construction job that leaves the building of the pyramids in the shade. Today, the Empire State Building here in New York City is going to be moved 200 yards, not piece by piece, but as it stands, all 1,250 feet of it. First of all, we'll explain how this tremendous task is going to be performed. Incidentally, the reason why the Empire State has to be moved is simple. The whole area around the Great Monument has been demolished to make way for modern development. But of course, we couldn't have the old Empire State knocked down, could we? No, sir.
Sure would like to have been there today.
Yeah, me too.
Now, after tunneling under the foundations, hydraulic jacks were placed beneath the building. Then the jacks were raised, and up she came. The next step was to lay a heavy-duty track under the building and run it to the new site. Now, all that remains to be done is to move the giant building inch by inch to its new site. Sounds easy, doesn't it? But it took 10 years of planning and 2 years of construction to get this far. Any minute now, the tremendously powerful atomic engines will start to move its gigantic load to the new site. Wait for it.
And then whatever happens in the episode happens in the episode. But that's what came on this morning in signaling or replaying or storytelling, or I don't even know the words. And then the thematic was when I went to the Red Cross church, it was a professional storyteller. And I was just like, brilliant. I mean, blessing, so grateful and so thankful to be in the presence of a professional. And it was in a really nice setting. I worked with my son, of course, wanted to partner with me. I was trying to do a little bit of separation so he could work with someone else, and I tried to help one of the other children. And so that was nice in the group. So that part I really enjoyed. What I did not enjoy was going up to church. Now, I've been in Patchogue. I had met somebody. She had invited me, which I don't know, again. It's just like coming back to Queens, where there is within one of the union reps was asking me to come and sit in on one of their meetings. Again, it was the only invitation I've ever had to sitting in on something. It was mostly held in Spanish, for which I don't speak. And then, but I was glad for community involvement and being asked to be there. I've also gone to a non-discriminant church, I guess, like one of these almost like boutiques, which was mostly, it was for some immigrants who had just come over and who were moved into the Patchogue area, for which I didn't know where they came from. I didn't know why they were influxing in that particular zip code. I had no idea what was behind any of that. So again, my children were going to the school, which was changing. So I went, and I was invited to their church. So I went, but there was no words spoken in English. So I went as just a GOD witness. And then, but here in Queens, after I've moved yet again, I went to an English church. I specifically went to an English church for English. ceremony. I don't go to the Greek church because I don't have an invitation um, into, if somebody wanted to invite me to a Greek ceremony, I would go. I just don't have that invitation, and I don't have the basic language skills to even understand the sermon. So I don't even know that I would necessarily get anything out of it for like a weekly basis. But I'm in the Red Cross Church. I'm in an area that speaks English as a first language. And for once to have Spanish changed out in the sermon, that makes sense. But for it to now be appearing more than once, raises my eyebrows. Is there something I should know? Especially since the words they choose is the person just outside Zion Gates that now has a congressional office. And at the bottom of this, because again, I don't know where these lines of guerrilla warfare are, but like if I have to call an Uncle Duke, I'm in a New England area of George Washington's, like General George Washington's known territory. So, like, I mean, how do I call out to an Uncle Duke when I'm at like a General George Washington level if I start to see things that don't look really like I'm an RH sensitive in this ABO group? I already know that, but I don't know like if other people have access to files and start targeting me as a like innocent flower in Uncle Duke's garden that he looks over. I mean, how, and if Uncle Duke and Uncle Mark get in a fight and then send people, where's my protection at General George Washington's like anything territory? So I'm looking for the cliff notes or the citations here, and it says Guillermo Colliar, and then it has a 19 copyright 1988, which is what brought up for me calling out to the important man that gave me this, since I know this was his very important jacket and he gave me one. Um, and again, I don't know if he was wearing a sports jacket. I don't know if it was a blazer. My memory is really foggy on that, but I do remember he was the children. It was the only thing similar I've ever seen is around Christmas time when someone dresses up as Santa Claus and comes into a room with a sack of toys, ready to hand out toys to children that know nothing except that Santa brings toys and free stuff. The other children knew to gather around this man and that he was important out in the world somewhere beyond, in the great beyond our little whaling town. Where I didn't have the like preparation. I didn't get my parents and I didn't I mean I certainly didn't have an itinerary. I didn't have a chance to do a book report that this person was coming to town. I didn't have like time for research on this, so it would have made sense to me like running in like quantumly entangling with this very important person out in the world somewhere, and then it was just like a chance encounter that he was there and then he disappeared. It's like being in an ocean of all different marine life, and I'm in the school of fish, and all of a sudden out of the deep waters from beyond comes this larger than we are in the school of fish that know what each other are, or getting to know what one another look like, and here's this larger marine mammal that we don't even have words for. I don't have words for. And then he just goes off. and disappears. And then I'm still in the same school of fish, but I don't even know, that wasn't labeled. I don't know what to call it. Like, but it's very important, and I felt I should be very grateful in my elder role, in communications, to just make mention of gratitude where I was shown something that I may not have known at the time, but seems incredibly significant somewhere. Um, and not even knowing how to construct the reality from where he is from and what he is used to. So there's that. Um, so that's what's going on today on this particular Sunday, which is for calendar placement. Um, it's Scion. It was the third Sunday of Easter on the Holy Eucharist calendar. So it's star 1978, star 8378, Nicole, Cattaruzza, it's Earth, solar system, Milky Way, universe, galaxy is broken, and it's Bayside Station, Bayside, New York, 11361.